You know what it is. That's right. It's time to talk money with your money nerd and financial coach. Now, tighten those purse strings and open those ears. It's the Money Talk with Tiff podcast.
Hey everyone, this is another episode of Tiffany's Take where I answer your money questions and also just provide some little tidbits about some financial topics. So if you want to ask your money question, go to www.moneytalkwitht.com/ask Tiffany, and I'll be more than happy to answer those for you. So I want to continue on our goals journey because this month, January 2023, I wanted to focus on goal setting because it's super important and a lot of people honestly just don't do it. So in the first episode of the series, we went over values and how they play a part in your goals. The second one was talking about SMART goals and how to construct those. Now I kind of want to get into, now that you have your SMART goals, I want to tell you a little bit about how to organize them. So you should have a list. I always tell my clients to at least do 3 goals. You want to break them out into short term and long term. Okay. So short term, we're thinking, less than a year or so. And then long term, we want to do anything over a year. So if you have 3 or more than 3, go ahead and split them out in short term, long term goals. Then you want to go ahead and put them in order from, in your SMART goals, you should have had a time constraint on them. So now you want to take them and put them in order from what you're going to complete first, and also to what you complete first all the way to what you will be completing last in each column of short versus long term. Now, you may also do it by order of importance. So like, let's say, for instance, you're like, first and foremost, I want to get a savings. So maybe you put that one first. Or let's say you want to get out of credit card debt and you want to prioritize that. Okay, then you put that one first. But you definitely need to put them in order of importance or in order of when you plan on getting them done first. That way, now when you go into your budget, you can say, okay, since I already know where I'm going, let's go ahead and take this budget and tweak it in order to make progress on whatever that goal is. And so that's kind of how you use your goal and your budget together. And so, for instance, let me give you an example. If I am on a goal where I'm like, okay, I'm going to pay off credit card debt. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my budget and say, okay, whatever money I have left over, whatever money that's extra, whatever the case may be, on top of my minimum payment, that's all going to this goal because that's what I'm prioritizing right now. So that's kind of how I work through my goals. Sometimes I do work on multiple ones simultaneously. So I do believe in, if you do not have a savings, definitely getting your savings up and paying your minimum payments on your credit cards. So that way you can keep out of trouble with your credit cards, but you can also get a savings up. Also, I might invest while I'm paying off debt or invest while I'm doing my savings, because I also believe in that. If the situation allows you to, definitely invest while you're doing all those things. I know some of the other quote unquote financial gurus like Dave Ramsey, he says, oh, stop everything and then just work on the baby steps in order. But I don't really fall into that camp because I feel like, let's say, for instance, if you have debt to where you'll be paying on debt until you're like 50, then you only have 10, 15 years to invest, which all that time that you waited while you was paying off debt, you could have been making money on that, and then the compound interest, and so on and so forth. And so you missed out on all that time. So I don't really prescribe to waiting on everything. If the situation allows, let me keep saying that, because if your finances aren't there, then of course, don't worry about investing. But if you have, like, for instance, right now I'm putting $25 in my Roth IRA every month. 25, that's it. Because I want to focus on debt payoff, right? So I'm putting $25 in, but guess what? That $25 keeps compounding. I also got into dividend stock. So, they're paying out dividends, which makes them grow even more. So, it's just up to what you're trying to get. But anyway, I digress. I'm getting off track. Let's stick to the goals. So short term is up to a year or so. Long term is anything more than that. I like to also have a stretch goal in there. So something that I want to accomplish like way, way down the road, or something that's real big. So that way I can take little steps to get to that thing as well. So for instance, one of my big goals is to be a world-renowned speaker, right? So I know right now I'm not a world-renowned speaker. I might be an international podcaster. Shout out to all the countries that listen, but I'm not a world-renowned speaker yet. And so at the top of my long-term goals, I want to be a world-renowned speaker. So now what I can do is take that and do small baby goals to get there. Like, for instance, one of my baby goals in order to get there was dealing with the podcast. Last year, I wanted to hit 50,000 listens on the podcast. I made it. Actually ended the year with like 53,000. So thank you so much for listening. But all of that to say, that's part of my long-term goal of being a world-renowned speaker, right? So I'm getting my skills up as I'm talking to you through the podcast in order to make that happen. That's a short-term goal feeding into a long-term goal. So you can also look at that. So look at your long-term goals list and see which ones you can break down into smaller bite-sized pieces that you can put in the short-term list to work up to that. So a good example of that also, let's say your long-term goal is to be completely debt-free, let's say in 5 years, right? Let's say your credit cards, you might can knock those down in a year. All right. So that means that's a short-term goal feeding into a long-term goal. So make sure you look out for that as well. And that also keeps you on track. So super important to do that. As far as goals on this step of the game, we're just putting them in order, figuring out how we're going to implement. And in the next episode, I'll talk about how we start implementing those things. So diving deeper into how I use my budget and things like that to make it happen. So that should be enough for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. Like I said, if you want to have your question answered on the Money Talk with Tiff podcast, feel free to go to www.moneytalkwitht.com/Ask Tiffany, and I'll be more than happy to answer for you. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you for listening, joining, and being a part of the Money Talk with Tiff podcast this week. You can check Tiff out every Thursday for a new Money Talk podcast. But if you just can't wait until next week, you can listen to previous podcast episodes at moneytalkwitht.com or follow Tiff on all social media platforms at Money Talk with T. Until next time, spend wise by spending less than you make. A word to the money wise is always sufficient.